Okay, so here we are in the midst of the third turn of Virgin Queen. The Ottomans completed their siege of Belgrade and swung up using a fairly large card to do that, laying siege now to Buda and putting themselves in a position to really kind of harass the empire. You can see the empire's points are decreasing. They're not really getting the benefit that it looked like they were. They became too much of a threat, and the Ottomans alone are capable of handling them, it looks like. Moving on, the Spaniards fled back to Marseille. Now, they did something else. They dropped a fortress here. Okay, and let's see. The English, what the hell did they do? I don't know what they played. They ended up building the race-built galleon, but I think they also tried a piracy roll with Drake. I know they used a treasure in there somewhere, and the piracy roll didn't really work. As you can see, he's damaged now. And that was against the Portuguese. Then the French finished off their siege of Lyon. They played their big home card for this and then moved into Marseille. Now, they have Marseille under siege and they can make an assault next turn, but the Spaniards can bring a fleet in and prevent that. Unless, of course, the French counter by bringing their fleet around, but that's an expensive action. They can't build a fleet here, but they do have the papal fleet, which could perhaps be more easily utilized. They also have papal troops that they could send into northern Italy, conceivably. Not terribly easy, but through Modena they could. Alright, and let's see where else we are. We go to the Germans. Germans didn't have a lot that they could really do about their situation. Their troops are down, but they ended up playing the Murad, the third mandatory event, which kills Selim, and puts a slightly worse Ottoman ruler in place. They took the extra points, building some troops, I think. And let's see, we go to the Dutch, who moved their navigator up here and ended up dropping somewhere in here. We got circumnavigation for 2 extra victory points. That's been recorded here. And we're seeing sort of these glory victory points that happen. And these are one of my objections to Here I Stand as well. They end up more or less ensuring that you don't get a full-length game. I don't know how bad that is. For a lot of people, these games are long enough, and it certainly feels kind of long to me, but I feel gypped when it ends on turn 4 or 5, right? I want at least a chance to get all the cards in the game. Now, in this game, what do we got here? We got to remember that these go in at a certain point. So turn 5 is the last of these cards, and there may be more persons coming in, etc. Turn 5 looks like about the end, although there are some scientists and artists who come in late. They're okay because they're just victory points really waiting to happen. So I don't feel like you're losing too much of the game. But if you're losing, major cards and stuff because the game's ending too soon or not getting enough chances to get them, that's kind of painful to me. And it makes me feel cheated out of the game that I expected to play if I only get that much in. Been kind of toying with ideas for that. Like, what if everybody loses a victory point each turn? How would that work? It would unbalance the dynamics of the game. The games definitely have a certain dynamic where some players will be going for the automatic victory more easily. But the dominance victory is still available. So it's kind of intriguing to me. Anyway, I'm not really going to tweak it right now, obviously. But it is kind of a thought of maybe a way to get rid of that kind of nagging feeling from my playing of it. Alright, on to some more of these. Okay, so the Turks complete their siege here of Buda, and have taken that. we see an effect over here on the victory point chart again, with the Holy Roman Empire falling far enough behind that nobody's too worried about them anymore. They've lost those gained spaces that they had. And then Spain moved a fleet into place. They played their big home card here. Now, in addition to that, one of the reasons they played so many points, they made an assassination attempt on Montmorency, but they absolutely failed. They got a tied result, which will neutralize the informant that was being used to help them. I think this come back at the end of the turn, though. It just means that more espionage against the French doesn't work. This is the first turn where we've had espionage. It's not really too big a deal. You're just rolling dice. You get additional dice bonuses on these charts. Now, I was a little confused because I was looking up, hey, did it make sense to plant a Jesuit? They work pretty much the same way. And like with the informants, you really kind of have to look at the charts and digest all the different game components to understand what you can do and what advantages you get. The rules are not your source of information in this game, or not your only source of information. There's a lot here, and a lot of those special abilities just aren't summarized in the rules at all. If you read the Jesuit thing, well, it says, this helps promote the Catholic cause, 18.5. Well, I had to look pretty hard to find what that did, actually. That's over here in the conversion procedure. It does not affect Catholic conversion. It affects Protestant conversion by preventing it from happening. If I had placed, say, a Jesuit up in Berwick, that didn't seem terribly valuable. But it does have an effect over here on the chart for the English Catholic rebellion. Anyway, we'll go on with the other powers. And by the end of the round, the English inserted themselves into an informant into Spain. That's the Protestant card. And built themselves another race-built galleon. What the French did, they're down to one card. They played a card, I think. No, they held off playing a card. That was their last card. They're passing. They've got the siege, but they can't conduct it. They need a... Oh, they have a fleet. You know what? Well, they can do it next time, I guess. Nah, they're gonna take their shot at it. I would have done this. So they're gonna sail their papal fleet into play. That's 2 spaces, and now they get to roll their siege. That's this, and that's gonna be 4. They've got 4 strength points, so they got only 3 dice, 2 for that, 1 for Montmorency, and they're going to be facing 1, 2, 3 dice as well. So let's roll that off. The white are, of course, the French. And they did not get any hits, so their siege is going to fail. They were hoping to get away with it here as an advantage, but that's okay. Alright, they only get 1 die roll because they had to move their fleet. They can move the French fleet, though, as well. And they'll bring that down to the Atlantic. Is that going to help them? You see, they're 2 away. They're going to end up back where they were. But who knows? Oh, they have a treasure counter they have to play. That's only 1 CP. They'll take that to build themselves... They can't because they did an attack and a naval move. I don't know what they can do with 1 CP. They can buy a diplomatic influence. That seems to be about all they can afford with 1. They don't want to waste this, and they have to play it with a card. So let's pump their influence into the papacy because I see that as the most at risk right now. All right, but where did we go after them? The Germans played a low value card, throw some garrison into Pressburg, just try to slow down the Ottomans in case they want to keep going. Hope they don't get Vienna. And another key would really hurt at this point. And then we've got we get the Dutch, who played, of course, their home card, the Calvinist Zeal, and that launched a series of Reformation attempts, which has given them almost all of the Netherlands areas in terms of religious positioning. And we can see the effect there on that chart. Everybody's got to be careful. If that breaks 50, the game's over. The Protestants have won. And also, their points are going up here. So people are going to have to be kind of thinking about a Catholic countermeasures, because the Protestants are really building up a lot of steam without having done much. They haven't even launched the Huguenot revolts yet. All right. And we pulled another round around with the Ottomans moving into Pressburg, lay that under siege, forced the Germans, of course, way down later in the turn to build up a garrison in Vienna to make sure that that doesn't fall easily. They also did some piracy, which I forgot to mark with a little piracy marker, because they had a lot of points, and it's hard to find something to do with the Turkish points. It's actually hard to find things to do with a lot of people's points when you're not involved in a war and don't have any direct military actions. Yes, there are a lot of things you can do. You can pour points into the sciences. You can pour points into so many things. It's just hard to justify and determine, hey, which one's going to give me the most bang for my buck. And in this case, piracy, well, it hurts the Spaniards as well as helping me. That should be interesting. Speaking of the Spaniards, they played the Conquest of the Philippines card. This is a card that goes away after it's been played as the event. So they now own the Philippines, and this gives them a 5th treasure on their track. And look at that! Nobody has successfully done any piracy in the New World. This is sort of the first turn that we haven't seen a draining of those values. It doesn't mean much for Portugal, but boy does it mean something for Spain. They're going to get 5 treasures next turn. They still have one they haven't figured out what to do with yet. They've got 3 cards left. They've got to use it on their next card, or else they're going to have to go into their pool of holdable cards. Given that they don't have much on the board right now. Of course, they could build up an army and launch something with 3 cards. There's no question. They could do a lot to France. But it's not like they're close to winning the game by making a big commitment here. So, it's kind of, again, you got to balance these things. Is it worth trying to maybe get another key and get that extra card that you get off that from this? By spending some of your reserves. Always a tricky decision in these games. This one in Here I Stand in particular. Not all CDGs have that kind of balance in them. The English passed. The French are out of cards. The Germans, we already explained what they did. The Dutch converted some more of France. And France is now almost, almost entirely Protestant. Painfully so. Now, one thing that bugs me is, am I cheating? I don't know about these white spaces. Those are the Protestant home spaces. I think that's where they can build Protestant units, but I think they can convert anything in France, just like they can convert, things in England and Scotland. I'm going to look that up to make sure. But, yeah. Well, with nearly everybody not playing at this point, I'm always iffy about holding on to these cards, because you can capitalize them in some cases. Say, going off of pirating, grab yourself some of them Spanish treasure cards or counters. It's appealing. It's very appealing, but there's also the feeling of, they could be more valuable as cards next turn. Being able to monetize them, though, by turning them into treasure counters is definitely pleasing. Also being able to turn them into victory points is. So it's a tough call. But anyway, 4 of the 6 players are not doing anything. Basically the whole bottom end of the alignment. But the Turks have launched further into Vienna after having taken Pressburg. They left no garrison there because the Germans don't have any way to move right now. They also started prosecuting this war in Persia. They added a unit to it, and now they're getting there. That's worth a victory point to them if they can win it. Of course, it puts it back in the deck, but it gets rid of this stupid -1 card that they really don't want to face. And then for the Spaniards, oh, what did they do? I know they spent their treasure counter to grab themselves a bunch of mercenaries. This is building up for next turn. The other point, I think, was spent on some patronage. And this time, only the Turks went. And they not only resolved their foreign war, but they also took Vienna, the empire's capital. These forces go back to Istanbul, where they've got quite a big pile. The war in Persia is back in the deck. Someone can play it again. With that extra victory point and the victory points from Vienna, we're seeing the difference. The empire's just, down in the middle area now, and the Turks have surged ahead to 18 points. It's not quite at that point where they're, really at risk of winning. But now, people are starting to worry about them. Right now, they and the Protestants look the scariest. What that's going to do in terms of the diplomacy next time, hard to tell. Anyway, everybody's done at this point. So we're going on to the winter phase, a lot of bookkeeping, the marriage resolution. I'll come back after all of that with a brief recap of, whatever happened at that point, not the whole turn, obviously. Okay, well, everything's where it's supposed to be now, and people have moved back to their locations, mainly to their home areas. Of course, the Empire couldn't. Troops were taken. If you hold your capitals, you get a unit in each capital, each being the key because, say, Spain gets two of them, one in Milan as well as one in Madrid. However, the Empire doesn't. But the Empire does have the right to take their diplomatic mercenaries, and they did that. So they have 4 mercenaries to negotiate with next turn. It can't be bad. They can't trade them and get other mercenaries for them. They can't actually receive mercenaries from anyone, but it does give them a little bit of maybe they can get a card player, a treasure, or something like that off of it. Spain certainly has a pile of treasures, maybe more than they need. Not sure how many cards they have, but they've got 5 treasures sitting here. They're only going to produce 4. Well, they've got a couple of cards here, so they're okay. Let's talk about the marriages. All right. Henry III successfully married Louise of Lorraine, but she died in childbirth. Now, I don't know, trying to understand the marriage table, what one would think is at that point, the husband, or if the husband's murdered, the wife might go back in the pile. I don't think that happens. It certainly doesn't in this case because Henry's got to be on here to score the victory point. So I'm just saying they're both out of the option there. Let's look at another one. Marguerite de Valois and Henry of Navarre got married. This was actually successful, gave extra victory points for the wedding points. Both France and the Protestants got that. It's not a happy marriage. They had a lot of children. Great. Okay, final one, Elizabeth of Austria. Now this was kind of the spoiler one that the... Ooh, I forgot one. Okay, Elizabeth of Austria married William of Orange, and it ended up not scoring points. I don't remember what it was. It was the barren wife or whatever. Well, he either killed her or ditched her or something, because he's back in the pool next turn at full value, 2 points. I don't quite understand that, but, I guess it's good to be Protestant or something in this era. But I forgot this set, Philip and Anne of Austria. Let's just roll them up. Philip's only a 1 right now. Anne's a 2, so that's a 3. And they get a 5, that gives us an 8. Any bonuses? May re-roll the lowest. Okay. That didn't help. So that's 4 and 3 is just a 7. That's not good at all. And a 7 is a death in childbirth. The wife dies in childbirth. Well, again, I don't know what this does, but Philip's about ready to die in terms of being eligible to marry. Presumably he goes and finds himself some minor noble or something, or just dies and I don't know, someone else takes place. Anne is certainly out of the game. She's dead. I think Philip is too. And I think he would be anyway because of the aging rules. So, let's get rid of them. And there was no bonus there, and not much reason except, to try to score some marriages. All right, well, at this point, Paris gets its turn 3 victory point marker, if I can find it. That's just a 1-pointer. And this is something I don't really like. France, for example, and England gets similarly a Virgin Queen marker. The Empire does not get a marker for dominating Europe. I don't know if there are any others that happen at this point. Paris, Central Europe, yeah, okay. I don't see a winner in the game at this point. Turks are not far enough ahead. Nobody's got enough keys, although the Turks are scary close on that too. That's something that happens. Once you start getting, enough points, a lot of them could be generated from these, and you could be getting close there too. So the Turks are the big bad boy right now that everybody's going to be worried about, I think, although the Protestants are very scary with what they're saying. Anyway, the thought I was coming up with, there's something I don't like about this game, which kind of feels like, say, the Pope in Here I Stand, and maybe the Turks with their piracy in Here I Stand as well. But in a special case, it's here with, oh yeah, I own Paris, I get a point. Oh yeah, I'm not married, I get a point. Just these things you get for not particularly doing anything or being impressive. Yes, maybe they're balancing factors. Yes, they make some sense in the game, perhaps, in terms of the, the period. But I don't know. They just don't excite me, and I feel too much like I'm playing the game. There's elements of that in, say, Europa Universalis as well. But they're such a minor part of the game. Here it feels like there's this focus on points. They're so important. They're so, you're really trying to win this game in a way you're not trying to win, say, EU. Anyway, maybe the strength of the game is what brings it out. But here's the thing. It's just, it feels funny to me. That's all. All right. And Here I Stand has the same thing, and I love Here I Stand. So it's not a terrible blow. I'm going to load this one up, and we'll see what's going on next turn.